Are you tired of lugging around heavy, bulky tree stands, whether you're using a climber or a hang-on, and would prefer to hunt lighter and more mobile? If you said yes, then you need to check out the Tethered Mantis Saddle and Predator platform. For me, this setup has done a couple things for me over the past year and a half. I've definitely been more mobile, lighter, and when you get into those situations where maybe the wind switches on you or whatever, and in years past you didn't want to pull all your gear just because you didn't want to move it, didn't want to make additional noise and things of that nature, this kind of solved all those problems for me. And I'm able to kind of tear down quickly, make a move if I need to make a move, and get set up without losing a whole lot of hunting time. The other thing I do a lot more of with this is actually I'll still hunt my way through or just kind of go into an area where I'd like to check out, scout with all my stuff on my back. It's super light, so I don't really even notice it, and I hunt to where I'm going, or I still hunt through to where I'm ultimately going to set up, which is a great benefit, has been a great benefit to me so far this year. If you're interested in all these things, then you need to head over to tetherednation.com, check out all their information related to saddle hunting, and release your inner tree ninja. First thing I do in the morning before a hunt is, of course, I have to have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there probably feel the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Skull Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and, of course, donates 10% of their profits to conservation organizations who are helping us to secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 kilo roasts of coffee and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. All right, if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you guys know that I am good friends with all the guys over at Exodus. And I want to give you a quick heads up that you should be checking out some of their content if you haven't already. They have a podcast out called Trail Cam Radio, and they release new episodes every Tuesday. So the day before you listen to this one, you could be listening to that one as well. They've done some deep dives with some great guests. You'll recognize some of these names as Jeff Sturgis, Dan Enfalt, and the Hunting Public, and they also jump into and talk to some less-known hunters who consistently are getting it done many times on public land. If you prefer to watch podcasts, if you're looking for some video content, they have a YouTube channel as well, and that is packed, of course, with great videos and interviews. One of the most popular ones they did is a candid interview with John Eberhardt, and if you know anything about John, you always get the straight dope from him. And for specifically my PA listeners, they just recently posted a public land big woods interview with Steve Shirk, which I consumed, and it is pretty awesome. This dude's killing hammers and getting on giant deer in Pennsylvania, so it's absolutely a must listen. So if you're looking for more whitetail content, especially here during the course of the season, you just can't get enough. Be sure to head over to their podcast, Trail Cam Radio, and their YouTube channel, Exodus Trail Cameras, and drop them a subscription or review and let them know that Truth from the Stand sent you. If you're also in the market for a trail camera, over the last 4 years, of course, Exodus has consistently showed they build quality trail cameras that flat out just work. Of course, the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are built to last. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 153. Today, John and I cover my Iowa fourth quarter magic and much more, so stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Getting back on the schedule here for putting out podcasts on Wednesdays as opposed to every other day. That was quite the podcast marathon while I was in Iowa. I held true. I said that I was hoping to try to put one out every day, and I think I ended up putting one out a little more than every other day. I think there was a total of 9 podcasts, if I'm not mistaken, that came out during the course of the trip to Iowa. This maybe, I think, being the 10th. Officially, this is the last one of the Iowa trip. I only was holding it to put it out on Wednesday because John and I, of course, we recorded this super late on my last evening there for some good reasons. And then, of course, I pulled out of Iowa the following morning on Saturday morning at like 4 a.m. and drove 16 hours straight through back to Pennsylvania to get home so I could have at least one day to unpack on Sunday and get ready for, to get back to the grind, back to the work week, back to the regular JOB. But this podcast, if you've been following along on Instagram, you might know the ending to this story possibly, but I'll try not to spoil it here. For anyone who didn't follow along, there's a couple things I wanted to make mention before we jumped into the podcast. We jump into the podcast with John and I, just because the end of the day, the end of that night, the last night was kind of a haze. Everything was kind of happening quickly. I was, of course, super tired after taking care of some things in the woods till pretty late into the evening and so forth. So things were a little bit of a haze, but not to let the cat out of the bag, but had some fourth quarter magic in Iowa at the very end of the trip, the very last hour and a half of light. I managed to get the job done, so I was super stoked for that. I'm still super pumped about it. Nothing like waiting until the last day to finally come through. But because of that, I don't think I covered every point necessarily when John and I were talking, just because, being quite honest, I was mentally, physically, and probably emotionally to a degree fried, and didn't have a whole lot of gas in the tank, but wanted to try to get something, a podcast done while I was there with John. So with that, I never made clear during the course of the John and I's conversation that this was actually a different deer. If you were following along on Instagram, there was a big 8 that I had been chasing. I'd missed a couple times. If you followed along with any of the other Rut Log podcasts that kind of chronicled those episodes or those, missed opportunities. But this, in fact, was a different deer than the one that I was chasing. It was a location that was set up for a specific deer that I had multiple encounters with, but just didn't come to fruition. And this fella came through later in the evening with a little bit of shooting light left, and he's the one who was the lucky winner of a day 6 arrow. So I wanted to make mention of that because I got a lot of questions as to whether or not this was the deer that I had missed a couple times and was kind of trying to chase and chase down. So it was in fact a different deer. The other thing I wanted to make quick mention of, there's 2 more pieces of housekeeping here, and then we'll get to the podcast with John, I promise. One is that I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone out there who followed along during the journey, and especially during the course of the days where I had some shot opportunities and screwed the pooch. Those were a couple tough days to kind of get through, especially on a 15-day hunt. One happened at day 6, one happened I think in day 10 of the hunt, where I had some good opportunities at a really good deer, and I managed to mess both of those up. It was a little bit taxing, not gonna lie. You can go back and listen to those podcasts to kind of see, I guess, mentally exactly where I was at, but it was tough, and I was super appreciative of all the guys, and girls who reached out to me and showed, words of encouragement, and just let me know that they were riding along with me, and that, some of those guys that reached out, just let me know that, hey, I missed this week too, or whatever it was, so very appreciative of that. Also want to give a big thanks because, a lot of times, bow hunting is very much, I think in many ways a selfish sport, as we, kind of, leave our families many times to go do these things. So of course, super thankful for my wife, being as cool as she is with giving, not getting worked up whenever I take these long trips to go, chase something I love to do. So that goes without saying. But the other thing I wanted to mention was just, a big thanks, of course, to John. And we talk about that during the show. But him, me going out there and scouting in March, and him giving me a place to stay while I was out there and scouting in March, and talking through just different things about how Iowa's a little bit different and how to hunt some certain setups and areas and stuff like that. John's just, if you can't tell, he's been on the podcast for going on like 2+ years now at this point. He's a good buddy. Love him to death. Stand up dude, and he's got a heart of gold. And so big thanks to him, for all the stuff that he's done, not just on this trip, but the conversations that we've had like throughout the years together and stuff like that. Always appreciative of his friendship. The other thing I want to make mention too is I wanted to give a thanks to, guys that I, have really kind of helped me shape how I hunt, essentially. I think all of us, when we hunt as kids, it's oftentimes, friends and family, close friends and family who have the biggest impact on how we hunt. And then maybe as we get a little older and we, reach out to different resources, you start to find guys that maybe hunt a little bit differently, and you start picking up things from them. And I always say that I like to pick things up and kind of put in my bag of tricks from a lot of different people. And, I talked about this, I think, with John a little bit in another podcast. Like, this hunt was kind of, a lot of those things kind of coming to fruition, and me, really starting to, I think, put into place like some of the things that I wanted to ultimately do. I had some goals for myself that I set that I talked about in previous podcasts of how I wanted to, start to be more aggressive and challenge myself to do that, and, and trust my instincts a little bit more. And, um, and I have a super mobile setup, and just to utilize that more to its fullest ability. And that all kind of came to fruition during this. So it's like, you know, the encouragement of guys like Greg Litzinger, who I spend a lot of time with and have a lot of respect for as a hunter and as a buddy. He's helped me tremendously. He may not take credit for it with the way that I was shooting, but he's been somewhat my sensei as far as archery goes, and helping me develop a more consistent shot. And I think it was, I probably wouldn't have been able to make that final shot if it weren't for a lot of the work that he and I did together to understand and learn how to control my shot. Because that last one, it all came together. All the things that we had talked about, it took screwing up twice to mentally try to have to snap myself back into shape. But super appreciative of the time I get to spend with him, Chad Sylvester. Always kind of pushing, and challenging each other to grind harder and go deeper, go harder, and ultimately hunt smarter. So a big thanks to him, just for being a good buddy. And then, guys like Dan Enfalt and John Eberhardt, who get a ton of credit for guys having success, but it's not, I take a lot from their teachings. This is the second deer that I've killed using a lot of the tactics that I've picked up from Dan. I sent him a message to say as much, and he's not one to take a whole lot of credit for it. But this was a leeward side of a ridge, with an iffy wind that I was playing the wind on a razor's edge that really kind of allowed me to get it done. But a bunch of the encounters that I had during the course of these 2 weeks was hunting over primary scrape areas, and that's something that I've definitely picked up from John Eberhardt. In the time that I've got to talk to him, and not just on this podcast, but separately as well. So, there's a bunch of dudes I could go down the list that have been helpful, in kind of helping shape, how I hunt, and part of the reason why I was able to not just be successful in this trip, but why I was able to kind of grind it out after some failures and just kind of keep going. It's a lot of the, having the right support group and the right friends. It doesn't matter what you do in life, hunting, work, family, raising a family, whatever the case is. It's having the right people in your corner is what matters. And, I guess I could just say I thank my lucky stars in a hunting sense, and even just in a life sense, that the guys that I have in my corner, that they're there, because I think they're all top notch. Not only just great hunters, but they're great dudes. And they're the type of guys that you would go to battle with any day of the week, and you're thankful that they're there as your support system whenever you're going through something challenging, or just when you need to bounce things off of them. So with that, we'll kind of wrap up the hunting aspect of it. One more piece of housekeeping to do before we jump into the podcast is John and I mentioned we were giving away one of his bourbon barrel game calls, a turkey call. I have one. It's super rad. Maybe it'll help me kill a turkey this year, since I'm admittedly one of the world's worst turkey hunters. But we announced a few podcasts ago that we were going to be giving away one of his calls, and we did the drawing, and the winner is Troy Templeton. Troy, you are the winner of the turkey call. John will be reaching out to you to get your information to get that shipped out to you. So congratulations to you. Hopefully you lay the smack down on a thunder chicken this year using a badass bourbon barrel turkey call. If you haven't followed and liked John's Instagram page for the turkey calls, I definitely would check it out. They'd make a killer Christmas present for anyone who's into turkey hunting, whether they want to use it in the turkey woods or whether they just want to use it as like a collector's piece. It would make a great Christmas gift this year to give one of those. So definitely check those out. I believe on his on the Bourbon Barrel Game Calls Instagram page, you can get to the website to check out the products and figure out what you want to get. He has branded and non-branded calls, so there's a couple different variations you can get. So definitely check those out. So with that, let's go ahead and get and jump into the podcast. As always, thank you guys for listening, and I'll be talking to you guys soon. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. This is the, I don't know, we could affectionately refer to it as the rut recap episode.
Yeah.
I'm here with Mr. Johnny Utah, my brother from another mother. Feels like I've moved in, man. I feel like I'm becoming an Iowan.
You're like part Iowa resident.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I just need to get me some land and convince the wife to move here. That way I don't have to wait every 4 years to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But so yeah, this is the end of the trip. Day 15. Headed back to Pennsylvania tomorrow. I'll release this next week on Wednesday. We'll start to get back on our regular show schedule of putting them out on Wednesdays. But wanted to take the opportunity to record last one here with Utah live, since we're both in the same place, and just kind of talk about what has happened over the course of the 2 weeks, recap it, and then talk about what the plans are. Because even though rut is, well, not officially over, like the first part of rut is over, because we know, things kind of like to heat up again right around that Thanksgiving time frame, when those second does come in. Then of course we have late season that's happening as well. So Utah, why don't we get your update since the last time we spoke?
Oh, let's see. I guess that was the last time with the Drifter, with Connor.
Yeah, you and Drifter, yeah.
So last night, there was a buck that I call the Great Eight. I saw a doe, kind of caught me off guard. It was like such a flash, but she busted out of the timber 80 yards down from me, and she's running away from me. She's running south, and I've got a north wind, and I'm like, she couldn't have picked me up over there. She was beside me, but there was a little 6-pointer that was chasing her. I'm like, well, that's reassuring. That's comforting. It's been 3 days since I've seen any kind of buck activity at all.
Right. It did kind of die all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Just like someone shut the faucet off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, well, hopefully they're busting back up again. And if there is some kind of a lockdown thing going on and maybe they're starting to get out and cruise around a little bit and looking for those second and third, breeding pairs or something. But the Great Eight is hot on the tail of this little 6, and I thought, well, crap, that's cool. But they go into this draw south of me, and I thought, well, at any point they're probably going to catch my wind, and they're probably not going to, I won't ever see them anymore. But I see her come back out of that same draw, and the little 6 doesn't, but the Great Eight does. And I'm like,
nice.
They got down in that little draw, and they settled,
right.
They settled dominancy, real quick.
With a quickness.
Yeah. So she works her way all the way to 5-6 yards in front of the blind. She's directly downwind, and I'm going, nothing. She throws her head up in the nose, up in the air a few times, and I think she was smelling some ozonics or something, but she doesn't pay any mind, and then she kind of meals off to the side of me, and then lo and behold, he's just eating beans, and he's working his way to me, and I'm looking at the fading sun, setting sun, and I'm going, dude, hurry up, come on with it, It's taking him forever, and I'm thinking, okay,
hurry up, get over here to die.
Yeah. So I'm like, let me figure out exactly where I think he might come to, and then I'm thinking he's probably going to come all the way to 20 yards, and then I'm thinking, he breaks 25. I'm watching the sun. I'm like, if he breaks 30, if he breaks 40, I'm like, dude, you are wearing me out. He gets to 42 yards and turns broadside. And because I'm in a blind, it's so dark already inside that blind.
Yeah.
I can't see crap. Literally, I have to take my phone out to even dial to 42.
Right.
And I come to full draw on him, and I run a small side housing. So at that distance, it's literally like the top of the housing is a little above his back and the bottom of the housing is a little below his body.
Right.
And I'm like, I know the pin's in the center,
Right.
and I can left and right this, and I can up and down this, and I can probably just center punch him.
Right.
But I can't see my actual pin, and that really bothers me. So I said, I got to let down,
Right.
And I mean, it sucks, but it is what it is. But I mean, it's the ethical thing to do.
Well, and you also had like an unintended consequence with that deer too that slowed him up
Yes.
a bit as well.
Yeah. I had a neighboring hunter that I guess he decides he climbs down out of his tree 5 minutes before legal shooting light is up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was driving down the road, saw the buck in the field, and like just stopped and started like rubbernecking
Right.
on the gravel. And anybody that hunts near gravel roads or these deer are like, somebody stopped. So he's like not moving. He's on lockdown, and he's just staring at the truck in the road.
Right.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So then the truck ended up driving on, but of course he's still just like sitting there looking at the road. Now he's looking at the dust. Yeah. And so he's just not moving. Hindsight 2020, had the truck not stopped, he might have been in my lap 10 minutes sooner, 15 minutes sooner, 5 minutes sooner, anything.
Right.
Yeah,
because you literally needed like a handful of minutes.
Yeah. And it's in that last bit of legal light where you're like, I probably got 10 minutes of light. I got like 5 minutes. I got
it happens
3
quick,
minutes.
man.
Yeah. I mean, it starts going quick. So, so that kind of sucked, but, that was on a north wind. I went out today on a south wind because I saw him go north, and I thought maybe he'll reset and work his way south.
Mm-hmm.
No such luck.
No such luck. And then today,
I saw the same spike and the same little sixer
right,
that I saw last night,
and thought maybe the gang was back together.
Yeah, I was like, man, there's only one person missing from this party, and it's the grade 8. But
right,
I never saw him. So, I don't know. It's that I'm hunting a bean field right now. The farmer didn't really give me much indication as to when he thinks that they might be cutting those beans, but he did tell me he will be cutting his hay and alfalfa in a couple of days. So there's going to be a day in the next 2-3 days that my hunt's going to be completely boogered.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm a little off right now, man. I don't know exactly what my next play is going to be out there on that property. It's so thick. Trying to get in there is just nearly impossible. I mean, I am almost forced to hunt field edges and, these timber edges, these tiny, tiny, skinny little draws.
Yep.
That's for that property. That's kind of what I'm stuck to right now.
Right. On that piece, it's like you definitely have limited, tree opportunities to hunt out of and so forth. And I mean, I got the chance to walk it with you last year when we shed hunted and stuff like that. And we walked down into the timber off the one edge.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, to say it's thick is an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't shoot 10 yards if your life depended on in there. You know what I mean? So
no.
Yeah, I think that's a challenging place to hunt.
It is. It's going to be tough. I need to do a lot more work out there next summer, for sure. But it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, I got my summer planned out. Like, shit, it's November 15th. I need to be thinking like, what am I doing tomorrow?
Right.
So it's frustrating, man. It never fails. There's always a lot of crap going on when I want to just be focused on hunting, and
that's right.
It is what it is, but we'll figure it out. We'll keep grinding, and
that's all you can do.
Yeah. Get one. I get one. If I don't, I don't.
That's right. Yeah. It's what they call it, hunting and not killing.
Yeah.
know? So, I mean, as far as my update, it's
your update's a lot better than mine.
Yeah, it's for anyone who was following along on Instagram, you may have seen some of the posts. So I'll just kind of start from the day prior, after the day after we had the drifter on, because we talked a little bit about what my plan was going to be and how I was going to kind of tackle things. And so, I guess it would have been Thursday. I took the morning and I hunted down where I had missed that deer the first time. because I had a cell cam down there, and I had some does that were pretty active in that area. They were hitting a scrape that was down there in a licking branch, and so I really just, there were a few smaller bucks that were coming through on that, but I really was excited about the does being there, and was like, well, let me just get close to some does, and hopefully that'll put me into a good position. And so I went and hunted that on Thursday morning and had nothing. And so got out of the tree and was thinking about what my plan was going to be, for the afternoon into the evening. And when we had the drift drone, what we were talking about was my plan was really to just try to scout. And if I bumped the buck I was after, then I bumped him. Mm-hmm. But I needed to figure out if what I thought was happening was actually happening. So I went to where I had found his rub, or like the handful of hammer rubs that whatever buck laid down. And there was a small rub line that kind of walked back that draw. And so it was down one draw, up a ridge, down another draw, up another ridge, down another draw, up another ridge. And I basically made a big circle around the areas that I had hunted and or seen bucks. Mm-hmm. And when I finally got to a point where I thought, okay, things are starting to look good, boom, all of a sudden, jumped the buck out of the area. That was literally the area in which I kept seeing bucks come out of, right? And so where I ended up, my scout ended probably only 150 yards from the last tree that I had hunted in that particular area. And so I figured I just bumped the buck out of there. So whomever that was using it. I had assumed it was the one that I had missed previously, right? Because he's been kind of living in there. Hindsight now, after today's events, it may have been a different buck that was in there, but regardless, a buck. So I decided at that point there was a draw that the draw that I was sitting in at the edge of. As you get down into the timber a little further, like the elevation really drops. Like the one side of the draw goes down, obviously, and that ridge kind of stays high, right? And so as I'm looking at tree options, I'm thinking about how I want to set this thing up, and I'm thinking about what the wind's going to do. And, I know you like to do this too, and I'm not breaking news here or anything, but, I like to try to find a spot whenever I'm going to set up that has a barrier to one side of me, or something that's going to deter deer from coming to that side of me. That way I can kind of say, you know what? There isn't going to be anything that's going to come from this area. I don't really have to worry about shooting to this area. That's also the area where it's like I'll look to like try to play my wind if I can, right? Mm-hmm. And so my idea was that draw is pretty open, right? There's a little bit of multiflora rose that's there, but for all intents and purposes, it's pretty open terrain. It doesn't get thick until you get up on top of that ridge, and then that's where there's like some cedars and a bunch of multiflora rose and a bunch of small stem trees and shit.
Yeah.
And so my idea was like, well, I don't have a real barrier per se, but they're not going to want to be in that open terrain. So if I can set myself up basically on the edge of the draw where the ridge starts to break down into the draw, then I might be able to use that as like my pseudo barrier, right?
Right.
And so that was really the plan. There was a triple trunk tree that was there, and it was like as it widens at the top, as you go up, it's like just enough room for me to kind of fit in. So I had two trees to my back. I could actually shoot between the two to my back. And then I had plenty of shooting out in front of me, but just a couple windows. And there was one main trail that kind of went through there. And one thing that's crazy, man, is like I've noticed in this trip and hunting here is that very seldom, especially because the pieces of public that I'm hunting and that you hunt as well, like it's big woods, right? So
very big.
Yeah. So you don't have like super beaten down trails necessarily, right? Like it's not like super highways like you would get like, maybe in the Northeast where there's some smaller parcels or whatever, right? There would be one here and there, like the corner, right? That's a pretty defined trail. But in this area, like it was just like the small little area you could tell where deer were using it consistently, right? And so I wanted to set up to have a shot to that at two different places, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. And then so Thursday for that evening hunt, I had a northwest wind, which is basically just dumping my scent down into that draw, which was what I kind of wanted because, I didn't anticipate any deer coming up from that draw. And I was willing to give that up. So Sat there for the evening and had a deer that kind of was walking the logging road or that trail, hitting a scrape, put the binos on it, could tell that it was a buck, but wasn't sure what buck it was or how big it was. So I doe bleeded at it. And I don't know why I haven't busted out the doe bleed like all trip until like 2 days ago, you know? So I doe bleeded at it, and man, like he came on a string. Like it was like he came right up that draw to the right spot, hit that little trail, walked right in front of me. He was just a little rack 8, stopped at 16 yards right in front of me, and then just kind of kept walking on. I put him on Instagram Live, you know, because he was just kind of cool hanging out. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, man, if I could just get a shooter to do that, like that would be awesome. Nice, easy shot. You know, I need an easy shot at this point because, you know, it's the confidence might be a little shaken after 2 misses. But so that was basically the end of the hunt. And so the plan really was, is I was contemplating going out this morning, you know, so this is Friday, last day, and was going to go out in the morning and try to catch that buck on a bump and dump, right? Because I thought he was bedded back in. Because I found a couple beds as I was following his rub line. I found a couple beds, a couple scrapes back in the timber, and then I decided at some point last night that I wasn't going to hunt the morning because I really needed to get up and just kind of pack to get ready to head back to Pennsylvania, and I'd hunt just the evening. And I was just kind of coming to terms with the grips with like the fact that like, okay, this was an awesome trip. I got to see like super cool deer things and talk to deer like I've never been able to talk to them before and get them to respond to snort wheezes and rattling and like things like that like just in many instances don't work in Pennsylvania. Like you scare more things off than you do entice them. Just because of the pressure and like the deer numbers, and you know a deer doesn't need to fight in PA. So if you rattle, it's because there's 20 does for every buck. You know what I mean? So
Right.
why would you go get your ass kicked when you can just walk around the corner and get another one? You know. So that was my plan for today, and walked in super quiet, got up in my tree, left all my stuff, you know basically my platform, everything except my bow and my saddle essentially, you know, stayed in the tree overnight because I knew I was going back to that spot. Tonight, there was a southwest wind to start, which was great because it was basically going to cut from my left shoulder across my face into the front part of the draw out toward that logging road. And I didn't really anticipate anything coming from that side necessarily. Right. And then also once it gets down in that draw, I was watching my milkweed and I assumed it would probably start to get sucked down the draw a little bit as the thermal started to drop a little bit. It probably would never make it to the road, right. Or to the trail. So that was kind of what I was playing. The only kind of iffy thing was as the day went, it was going to turn more and more north. And so a north wind was one of those winds where it's like you and I talk about all the time, John. It's like it's almost perfect for the deer and almost completely wrong for you.
Yeah.
Like I'm dropping milkweed as it's turning north, and I'm literally threading the needle. Like my milkweed is floating like 10 yards, 15 yards just to the right of the trail that I anticipate a deer is going to walk up, right? And I'm sitting there going, this is either going to work, you know, or it's going to completely blow up in my face, you know, because it's like I'm threading the needle that like, you know, acutely.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there today. I'm having a good hunt, you know, hadn't seen anything yet to this point, and I just kind of stopped for a second and just was thinking about the trip and like how cool it's been and how much fun I've had, and that I've been grinding. And I kind of made peace with like the fact that like, hey, if I go home with a tag, you had 2 great shot opportunities that you botched, right? You had another encounter with a great deer at 26 yards, just couldn't get a shot because he was on high alert and I couldn't make any moves, right? Then had an additional encounter with that same deer. Like, you know, I had like 4 or 5 encounters with this one deer, right? And missed him twice. And I was like, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to wrap my tag around a deer, but if fate has it that I'm not supposed to have a deer, then I'm not supposed to have one. And I can leave Iowa going, that was a killer hunt, you know, and, I had a blast.
Yeah. You busted your ass.
Busted my ass. I'm dog shit tired. You know, it's like, I'm looking forward to sleep in like the worst way. So about that time, you know, I throw out a few tending grunts, doe bleat, and like a couple soft tending grunts. And like 3 minutes later, I hear brush. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. I just kind of look through the brush and I just see tines coming. I can't say that I immediately knew that it wasn't the deer that I had encounters with before, but immediately I was like, shoot her, right? So I grabbed my bow and I'm watching him. I'm like, if he will just continue down this trail, he's going to come to that spot where that buck went to yesterday, where I was like, if I could just get a shooter to walk down this trail at 16 yards and stop, that would be awesome. Sure enough, he starts making his way toward me. And he's on the move. Like, he heard a doe bleat and a buck, and he was like, I got to find who this is. I come to full draw. I'm ready to roll. He hits the first shooting window, which I wasn't planning to shoot him in. He hits the next one. I mouth bleeded. He didn't stop. So I mouth bleeded louder, and he just got on the other side of this tree and just stopped, just to where his head was behind the tree, but his shoulder and his diaphragm was exposed. Mouth bleeded him, stopped him at 16 yards, let an arrow rip. Didn't let it rip. Didn't shit the bed, like, watch the arrow, like, literally light up, because I was shooting a lighted knock, watch it light up, and, like, watched it disappear through him, and he kicked. He ran like 20 yards and then started just walking, tail down, right? And I was like, just go down, just go down right there. Go down right there. But he kept walking. So now I'm getting nervous, right? Because I'm gun shy at this point, right? Had 2 misses. And I was like, I know I didn't miss. Like, I watched the arrow disappear, unless it did some Houdini shit. Like that arrow went through him, right?
Yeah.
And as he's walking, he stops. So I doe bleed at him like 2 more times to see if I can't get him to turn around. Because I was like, now I'm like kind of freaking out. I'm like, did I miss him completely? Can I get him to turn around to come back to get another shot? Like, what?
Yeah.
What happened? He looks back for like a split second and just like slowly walks off with his tail down. I'm listening for a crash. I don't hear it. And it's the oddest thing, because any other deer that I've ever shot has like kicked and ran like a bat out of hell. And like didn't stop until like they piled up, right? And so I'm in the stand kind of like freaking out. And I was like, all right, just calm down, hang out, wait, don't get down right now, right? So I slowly, at this point it's 3:30, and I'm like, by the time I get the opportunity to get down, check the arrow, and think about what I need to do next, like, the hunt's going to be over, right? So I was like, you know what, to take my mind off it, I was like, I'm going to start taking my stuff out of the tree, because whether he's dead or whether I missed, regardless, that's the end of the hunt, right? Taking my stuff out of the tree, got all that done, pull my saddle platform, get down the sticks, go over to my arrow, and the first thing I did was I didn't even touch it. I just took a picture of it and sent it to you. And was like, this happened, and I don't even remember what question you asked me, but you asked me something, and I was like, there's no blood at the shot site, and the arrow was more clean than any arrow that I've ever had go through a deer. Right. Would you agree? Like, the arrow was like stupid clean.
Yeah. It's like it got wiped clean by like fat and hair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I'm nervous. Right. So you're like, walk 30 yards and see if you can find some, blood. So I'm walking, found just like a little bit of blood, a little bit of blood, a little bit of blood. I text you back and I'm like, this doesn't look good. Like, I'm not feeling it. And you're like, what's your plan? I'm like, I'm going to walk maybe like 30 yards, maybe 50 yards, and see if I can find anything. And then at that point, if I can't find anything, I was like, then I'm just going to back out and we can look tomorrow. So keep walking. I thought he made a right turn. See, like, you know how it is. Like, when you get out of a tree and you've shot a deer, it's like, once you get, like, you look while you're in the tree and you're like, that's where he was at. And then as soon as you get down on the ground, perspective changes. And now you're like, I got no clue where the hell he was at. You know what I mean? And I forgot my binos today, so I couldn't like really look to see and watch him walk away. So I found the last bit of blood where it's like he started actually putting out just a little bit of blood. Right. And I went back to that spot, and that was maybe like 20 yards from, the shot site.
Yeah.
And then I just started doing circles around it, right? Trying to figure out, like, did he lay down any more blood anywhere? And all of a sudden, boom, I found a decent spot. And I was like, well, this is to the left of where I thought he went. So what had happened was the last spot I found blood, I thought he went further to the right. And there was not a trail, but like it looked like a deer had kicked up leaves. Right. And so I started following that because I assumed that that's where he went. He actually went to the left and I found that blood. And then all of a sudden it was like a bigger spot of blood, a bigger spot of blood. Now, clearly where he blew his nose out and there were some bubbles in this, like that big patch of blood. So now I'm feeling good. I'm like, all right, he's finally starting to pump a little bit. Right.
Yeah.
I walk like another 30 yards and I pick my head up and look, and there he is 10 yards in front of me.
Yeah.
He probably went 60 yards max from the spot of impact. And he's a super cool Iowa 9-point with a split G2 on his right side. And I was pretty pumped, man. Like it was weird because I was excited, but it was also like a sense of relief where I was just like, it's over. The 15th day, the 11th hour, like you couldn't get much more down to the wire. And then of course the drag out, which is brutal. So I texted you a picture of him because I kept texting you blood pictures.
Uh-huh.
And I finally, when I got to him, I just sent a picture and your response was like, hell yes. So, but man, it's, that was like, dude, I don't know. I couldn't have pushed it any further to the limit.
No, I mean, it's funny because I had a conversation with somebody here a couple weeks ago and I was like, why does it seem like everybody always kills in the last like hour or the last sit of a hunt or they go into overtime and then they kill something? And I don't know why it works out that way. It's either on the first sit or the last sit. Like it never happens just like day 4, day 5.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Day 10.
Yeah. Day 15.
Yeah. Yeah. It always has to be like the last day or the first day.
Yeah.
It's so random.
I mean, the coolest thing about it, one, he's super cool buck. I'm super pumped, but I'm even more pumped that like I kind of had to, that little, or not little, but that piece that I kept hunting that area. It's like I kept having to like dial it in because I hunted 3 different trees in there and I saw bucks at each tree, but it was like the first set I was in that big tree that I showed you, which I think would be awesome to put a set in down there because that's a sweet tree. But it was like the bucks I was seeing, like they just wouldn't commit and come out to give you a shot. They would stay back in the brush, and you could get a shot back there, and that's where I missed him. But like they still have to come pretty close to the trail to get a shot because he was just a few yards into the timber, and it was still a 28-yard shot, and that's through shit. You know what I mean? That's a hard shot to make.
Yeah.
And then I moved to that other tree that I showed you that was across the trail, just a couple yards into the timber, and then he came up off my right on top of that little knob. It's the beginning of the ridge, really. And you're still shooting through junk and whatever. And I'm like, there's got to be a better setup back there. And that's when I did all the scouting or whatever. And I ended up close to where I was at previously because that was still the best setup. And I ended up on a tree that was back in. Basically, once you get through that brush, there's like a little, almost like oak flat that opens up back there. And it's still high stem count and kind of gnarly, but there's a ton of security cover for them to where they can pop out. And if they want to come out to see who's calling or what doe's bleeding or, what buck is, or fighting, what bucks are fighting or whatever, they got to commit and come out because they can't see. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty sweet little spot. And that's the part that I was super stoked about was that piece was like, that was an area that you and I never even scouted in March,
No, we went straight and then to the right.
Yeah. And so I hopped down in there and, put some boots on the ground, had a couple encounters, and then just kept kind of dialing it until I finally had the encounters I was looking for and then finally got it done.
Yeah.
So it's all the things that I've been wanting to practice and you and I've talked about where it was like, wanting to get better at reading sign and trusting myself and doing all those things. It was like this trip was, I think for me, it was a big growth, opportunity or period for me on
putting
this
it all together and
and just a foreign place. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's I think this trip has made me a better deer hunter. 15 days worth of,
Sure.
of grinding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had a lot of failure. I had to mentally keep my shit together.
Yeah.
And not just, dude, because after I missed that second time, I was ready.
Yeah, I was literally like looking at suicide hotlines, and I was going to call and just be like, can I get like a credit on an account or a prepay for like a good 30-minute talking to?
Right. That after that second one, it was like, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it crossed my mind of going like, you know what? Let's just pack up. Let's just head back to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Like it's not meant to be,
Yeah.
You've missed twice.
That's the cool part, man. Like you hung in there, having 2 misses like that, like, dude, that's tough to bounce back from. And like, you're stuck essentially. Like, and I don't mean, obviously you could have left at any time, but
Right.
like you have an allotment of time here. You have a tag that is not going to be good again for a minimum of 4 years.
Right. Exactly.
That's tough, dude.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of each day, I can come home, see the kids, see the wife, whatever. And granted, sometimes they're asleep already by the time I get
Right.
back home, but still, you get almost a little bit of a reset of normal life.
Because you have normal life.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it's like I was going back to the cabin every night, just replaying
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah. And I was trying to get you over here more because especially after that miss,
Right,
I was like,
yeah.
hey, dude, you want to come to the house and hang out tonight? Like, I was like, I don't think that Clint needs to be alone, especially
with the river right out behind us.
Yeah, idle time might not be the best thing for him right now, but then again, you probably would have just seen me building bourbon calls.
Right.
That's the thing. I still got more calls to build tonight. And
Right.
I got to dry wash clothes. While we've been doing the podcast, I ate dinner and I edited photos.
Right.
And I still got another 50 photos to go. So it's like, yeah, I probably will not hunt tomorrow morning because I have a feeling I'm going to be working till 1 o'clock in the morning. But,
Right.
It is what it is. But yeah, it's funny because I told my wife when I came in tonight, I was like, fuck, I was like, Clint freaking got it done.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like,
right.
I literally thought he was like, I was going to have to talk him off the ledge, but he pulled his shit together and stayed after it and grinded. I was like, I dig that. You know what I mean? Like I respect you and
I appreciate that.
I haven't had, by the way, everybody listening, like I haven't conveyed this to Clint until now, but, I did give him a big hug as soon as I saw him, but like, seriously, dude, like in all seriousness, like I'm super stoked for you. Way to push past that. People talk about target panic and getting down and beating themselves up. Like you kept pushing it, going to new places, rehanging in the same place, then going to a new place and then rehanging and bouncing around and you're reading sign. And I was getting pumped for you because I'd get a text message and you're like, dude, I'm walking into a new spot and I see a ton of fresh sign. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Like that was cool. I told her, she's like, did you see anything tonight? I'm like, no. So I'm like, I had Kobe here, for a week.
Mm-hmm.
I had Clint here for 2 weeks. I was like, and then, Taylor was, running a camera for me for a week.
Right.
So like, I haven't been 100% locked in on my normal hunting. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because no matter what, we were hunting different properties. I was still like, hey, I wonder what he's seeing, what's he doing, and and even in my tree stand, I'm going, well, I know what piece he's on, and they're, I think I text you one day, I'm like, be watching that corn edge, like you might see something come from that corn edge. Like I felt like I was kind of, mentally locked into your hunt, and then when Kobe was here, same thing. I was like, I was kind of locked into his hunt, and so I'm like, okay, everybody's got to get the heck out of Iowa so I can focus on my hunt. You know what I mean?
I know, right?
But no, I'm stoked for you, dude. Like I am so tickled to death. I thought about it all day today. I'm like, man, today's the last day.
Right.
If he, I don't care even if I'm not friends with the person. I'm like, you wait 4 years to come to Iowa, and if you don't have a successful hunt, and I know as soon as I say that, people say, oh, if you get time in the woods, that's a successful hunt. That goes without saying.
Right. But you don't buy the tag to take it home with you.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
know
you
what I
didn't
mean?
buy
It's
it to
like-
frame it.
Right. It's like if you wanted to do that, I could just drive to Iowa and walk around the woods anytime
Yeah.
I would like to.
Or just buy
You know
it
what
and
I mean?
put it in a shadow box and never come. You
Right.
know, like
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
you don't buy the tag. You buy the tag to wrap it around antlers. So,
Right.
isn't it weird? Have you noticed that? Like in the last like year, 2 years, like everything you say, you almost have to like clarify it.
I know, right?
So like somebody doesn't like try to rip your ass for it.
So someone doesn't get triggered.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, but
Well, man, I appreciate the kind words, man, because it was definitely a grind. And you and I we've never hunted together before. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to come out and do the best I could. You know what I mean? And you know, I like to bounce around. You know what I mean? I used to not bounce around a whole lot. That's something actually I picked up from Sylvester a lot from hunting with him.
yeah.
Because he does a lot of that. You know, some of it too was just in talking with Cody. You know what I mean as well.
yeah,
You know, because
yeah.
I know it's that classic like first time sit. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? It's like, and that was a lot of the stuff that I had. You know, because the first sit in down by the corn, right? It was like a freaking buck parade the one day. You know, and I passed one that I had on video, and you were like,
Yeah, I know.
Maybe
that was like
it-
day one. When
Day
did
two.
Day two? Okay.
it was day
yeah,
2. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was day 2.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, dude.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
shooting fish in a barrel there.
Right. And then I went down to that lower piece, scouted, hopped in, did like a freestyle hunt, snort wheezed a nice buck in, you know what I mean? And then I went over to the piece that I killed this buck on, but you know, in a different area, missed one, you know? And so a lot of those encounters were like first time or a second time sits, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that's something I've been wanting to get better at. And it means a lot to me that, you know, that I don't want to say that you approve, right? But that, you know, that you recognize like the effort
Yeah.
that I put in and just
for sure.
in getting after it. And I appreciate the hell out of you, you know, helping me out and just being a good friend, man.
Yeah.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like, you know, we've known each other for a couple years. We've not gotten to spend this amount of time together before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I didn't get sick of you, so that's good.
Right.
Just kidding.
Nice.
Beat it.
Beat it. Get out
Go
of here.
back to PA.
But I definitely appreciated the muscles, the dragging, because my legs were toast getting
Yeah.
up out of that.
There was a meme I saw today, and it said something like, "Nothing will remind you how out of shape you are," like dragging a deer out.
Yeah, dude. Exactly.
It's totally true.
Dude.
But I mean, you did a lot of the hard work getting him out of the timber, getting him to the trail.
Good Lord. That was brutal. His rack got caught on everything.
Oh yeah,
And I had my pack with all my other gear like on my back. It was
yeah.
just-
You don't have to go back and make
yeah.
another trip.
I was
back
like,
in
it's
there.
just gonna suck once. I'm just
yeah,
yeah.
Just get it over with.
Yeah, and then once I got to the trail, then I took my stuff back to the truck, came back, or
Yeah.
waited for you,
Yeah.
you know, because I was like, all right, because it was a far enough drag. I don't know how. I mean, I think from where I got him, I think it was like in total, it was like 3/4 of a mile ish.
Yeah,
And that trail wasn't easy either because we've had snow, and so it's muddy.
yeah.
you're
The top
slipping.
inch was mud, and then below that was still frozen, so it's just like greasy and slimy.
Yeah, so it was like dragging him through like dough.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like sand. Like, yeah. For every step we took, I think there was at least like an eighth of a step backwards.
Yeah.
where you slide a little bit. You know.
Exactly. So what's your plans, man, going forward? You got the rest of the season here in Iowa.
Yeah. So I have a brand new Ouija board that I'm going to open up.
There you go.
And see if it'll point me in the direction of what stand I need to go to. So, you know, I mean, like for me, you know, I'm not doing the saddle thing. I'm doing climbing sticks and a stand, but I'm also doing a camera arm base, camera arm, camera gear, you know, and then my bow. So tearing down and doing hanging bangs
Yeah.
really kind of sucks.
I bet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It, you know, and not to say that it can't be done, not to say I haven't done it before, but usually when I do it, I usually have a camera guy. So
Right.
at least you have another person to kind of help hand you sticks, or,
Right.
you know, once you get up in the tree, he's messing with the camera arm base and I'm messing with the bow and the ozonics and screw ins and that kind of stuff. But
right.
so doing what I'm doing with the video stuff, it does make it a little tougher,
Yep.
and it's real easy to like go, yeah, you know what? I think I'll sit that stand one more time because
Right.
it's already set up.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. That, I mean, you've killed good deer over there too, man. I mean, it's not like
that's what's killing
it'd be
me.
one thing if you weren't seeing any good deer
And I was just
all.
grinding it out. Yeah. I mean, every other day I'm seeing one of my shooters and
Yeah.
they're just in a different spot, or then I move to that spot, then they're in this different spot. And it, yeah, it's been frustrating. And I talked to another buddy today and I said, what's more frustrating? A mutual friend of ours, Billy
Yeah.
C. I said, is it more frustrating to not see a shooter buck or to see your shooter buck at 100 yards?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to me, I think it's almost more frustrating seeing them and you can't kill them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they're out of sight. But then again, seeing them gives you hope to go back out again, you know, the next day. And,
Right.
but man, you know, we've talked about it in past podcasts. This has been such a crazy year for me. It's been really, really stressful. And I'll be honest. I mean, I'm fighting that balance of work versus pleasure. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
You know, and I'm like, remind myself, I love hunting. I love chasing whitetails. I love doing video and photos.
Right.
I can go do all that if I
Right.
go out into the timber and I go out into field edges or food plots or whatever I want to go do. But, yeah, it's been, you know, and I've been grinding about a week before you got here. So when I kind of kicked it off and yes, I'm starting to feel a little bit of burn.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely got the burn. Like Wilson, you know, Wilson from back home, you know, he texted me after I shot the deer and, or actually he called me while I was getting ready to gut him. And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, you know, Rut's just really getting cranking back here. You're getting back just in time. You'll be getting back just in time. I'm like, dude, I don't know that I'm going to be walking into the timber in the next like week or so. It probably won't be till like I take my daughter gun hunting like the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't want to necessarily, but look, my wife was just super cool with me being gone for 2 weeks to go chase whitetails in Iowa.
Yeah.
Like probably need to like kick it at home a weekend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, you know, the whole time I've been in Iowa, I've still been holding on to my first state tag at Thanksgiving, except for last year. Last year was the first year that I killed something before, and I was kind of looking forward to hanging out with the family for Thanksgiving. Well, then I ended up going on that Sitka hunt in Illinois during Thanksgiving. So I kept saying, man, I need to get something ground checked before Thanksgiving. I want to go do Thanksgiving, you know, with the family this year.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, we're getting close. Yeah. we got like eight more days. I'm like, when is Thanksgiving?
I don't even remember.
Is it the 24th?
Something like that.
Or is it 28th?
I don't even know.
Seems like it should always be on the same day every year.
Yeah, I know it's like the last Thursday of the month, but like, or next to last Thursday. It's the 21st, I think.
No, 28th.
Is it the 28th?
28th.
Oh, that's weird. It is
cool. I got a few more days. So, yeah. I mean, I've got
almost 2 weeks.
Yeah. Plenty of time.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You can miss twice in that time.
Yeah.
And kill one.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So, that's the plan. I mean, I've got my one lease that I'm probably going to keep grinding it out on. I mean, I've seen some of those shooters.
What about that other farm?
Yeah, that's where I was hunting a lot in the end of October. It's probably in my best interest to swing out there and check some cameras, see if anything's starting to hit scrapes again over there. It just went cold, like nothing. I had like 3 sits in a row. I never even saw a deer.
Oh, wow.
Like at all.
Wow.
Those are long days.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. And one of those days, I think I walked in, I hunted the morning. I sat till 9. I came out, got a bite to eat, and went back at noon. And then this was before the time change. So I was sitting till like 6:30. And I'm like, dude, I just did 9 hours on the stand today and I never saw a deer.
Right.
You've got to be kidding me. Now that property, where my set is, that I don't have access to the whole farm. I just have part of the farm. And I knew this was going to happen when I agreed to, I want to hang a set and hunt it. they moved their horses
Mm.
into the cut beans. So I know that horses and deer will coexist sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that property, like the odds are,
Diminished.
yeah, they're kind of dropping on that. So unless I see sign of something, and I'm in one of those spots where I don't expect to see a lot of sign. I just see it as a,
Just, right. It
if
should
people listening could see me
be pointing.
pointing
feverishly.
fingers. Yeah. And my fingers are kind of coming
Crossing.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, it's like a little hub,
Yeah.
or it should be a hub. It's what
Right.
it looks like on topos.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just reading it wrong or something.
Right.
I'm starting to realize I might not be as good of a deer hunter as I thought I was.
No, I think you're pretty good. I think you're a pretty good deer hunter.
It's just, I don't know. This year, there's been more times this year than probably all my years combined. When you look at a spot and you're like, I need to sit that stand there, or I need to hunt that draw today. And then you at the last second, you go, you know what? On second thought, I better go to this side. I'm going to go sit that. Then you check your trail camera and you're like, oh, I would have been sitting that stand.
The one thing I started doing this year, and part of it was during this trip, was as soon as I made the first decision,
Stuck with it.
I never went back and thought about it again.
Sure.
It was just like, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I just committed to it, that like, that's where I'm going to kill something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just like going to go sit that spot now.
Yeah.
Like I never hunted from the ground. Well, I shouldn't say I never. I grew up hunting from the ground,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't hunted from the ground with a bow in my hand ever. It always was still hunting with a gun, essentially, right? That's how I grew up doing with my dad until this trip.
And that's the way his daddy did it. That's the way his daddy did
That's
it.
right.
By God,
that's the way his brother did it when he caught
Yeah.
rattlesnakes.
Right.
But and I just that day when I jumped that big deer out of that little draw in the middle of that CRP field, I was like, not gonna second guess. I was like, I'm gonna kill him from the ground tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see him, right? But I just made a decision. That's what I was gonna do, and I just went and did it.
Yeah.
Saw a small buck there, but that's one thing. I guess one of my takeaways from this trip was just like, I stopped second guessing myself. I start just believing what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Don't give yourself a chance to talk yourself out of it.
Right. If I see something that, like, if I go, "Ooh, man," like, there's a reason I said, "Ooh, man."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, because it looks pretty good. You know what I mean? And so that should be enough, like, to figure out, okay, now which tree do I want to be in? Like, yes, you can debate that, because you got to think about, well, what's the wind going to do? Where are they going to come from? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah, your exact placement becomes tricky, right? Yeah. And you have to debate that a little bit. But the area, it's like, I usually now it seems like I just kind of stick with it, if I can, and just kind of make the decision, and that's how I roll, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
But I think my plans for the rest of the hunting season, I still have a buck tag in Pennsylvania to try to fill. Don't know that I'll get out here during this last weekend ish before Thanksgiving hits. Gun season comes in the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Taking my daughter out for that, which would be pretty cool. May get a hunt in a bow hunt during rifle season back in PA. We'll see how that materializes. But then after that, I'll hit late season like usual, and Powerhead. If nothing else, I think there's a couple places back there that I really want to check out, and do a little bit more scouting, and kind of scout/hunt during late season. Really more intel grabbing for next year in a lot of ways. But the one thing I definitely want to do is, I've got a handful of doe tags, and I want to fill every single one of those for no other reason that I just need to put arrows in deer. I realize that, like, passing deer and stuff like that I've done in the past has limited the opportunities or the amount of times I'm going to have live action, in a tree with a bow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like on this trip that bit me in the ass at the beginning, because I never released an arrow last year at a deer, and so I essentially went a year and a half, almost 2 years without, I've released one arrow, and it was a doe,
Wow.
And so I passed deer. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm not going to shoot that one. Oh, I'm not going to shoot that one. And so I literally haven't released one arrow at a live target in 2 years, you know, and I feel like I just need to be more diligent about filling my doe tags. If for nothing else, I just need to stay sharp in shooting live targets.
Man, I used to tell people that all the time. One of the things like I don't think I'm probably more calculated now. And I'm at that point where I don't know that I enjoy it as much as I used to, in the sense that, like, now it's I don't want to shoot that buck. Hey, he's 4, but man, if he was 5, I'd probably shoot him. So I'm gonna let him go. And then you see a 5, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to put a tag on that deer or not. I might hold out for a different 5, or maybe even a 6-year-old or something. It's weird how that happens. And it seems like it can be an easy, natural progression, but at the same time, it's not as much fun as it was. I used to enjoy the shit out of shooting 3 and 4-year-olds. You know what I mean? And some people, it's just as you maturity of a hunter, a bow hunter, you're just trying to step it up a little bit. And that's the reason why I moved here, is I wanted to chase a higher age class of deer. And then now that I've been doing it, I'm like, it's actually not as fun.
Right. Yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird. Like, for me, I think, not living in Iowa, it's a little different, right? It's like PA. It's like you're not really even so much chasing age class as you are like shooter caliber of size of antler, right? Yeah. In a lot of cases. Yeah. I would like to kill a 3.5-year-old in Pennsylvania. One that has, if he's 3.5 years old, he's probably going to be a decent shooter in PA. My goal here was a 4.5. Didn't reach it. I think we said that the deer I shot was probably 3.5 today. Yeah, I
mean, he didn't have his birth certificate on him,
right?
But knowing my deer here, knowing the bodies, even timber bucks, I would put him at 3.5. But he was a awesome buck. Yeah, I mean, I was stoked for you. I was like,
it's like, I'm not giving him back. You know what I mean? It's like, that's
hey, I in the back of my head, I was like, he's going to see a 2-year-old that's like 100 inches. He's going to smoke it thinking it's a giant. You know what I mean?
Right.
And as you were able to, testify to, they're big deer.
They are big deer.
Big bodies.
Yeah. He was a heavy dude, long. Yeah. Crazy long.
And the only reason I say that deer was 3.5 was his legs.
Yeah.
He had long legs.
Yep. 100% agree. Yep. But, I mean, I think for me, it's like, I need to shoot more deer.
Yep.
Because I shouldn't go, like, I can't go like 2 years and only release one arrow and expect myself to be able to have all my shit together in the tree whenever that time comes and I need to release an arrow.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So I tell people all the time, like, as soon as the season starts, shoot the absolute first doe you see.
Yep.
Get the rust off.
Yep.
Get back into. That's how you become, more of a killer. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no hesitation.
Yep.
Because for a lot of us, if you don't bow hunt turkeys, then it's very likely it's been a full year since you've shot a live animal. With your bow.
Yep.
That was one of the reasons why I got into bow hunting turkeys. Is it was just, I thought it would keep me sharp.
Yep.
And then, by God, I ended up falling in love with it. And I'm like, I love chasing turkeys with a bow. This is awesome. So, but Todd Pregnance, rest his soul. I mean, that he coined that phrase to me. He said, hey, shooting turkeys with a bow keeps you sharp.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what that was just.
Right.
Keeping yourself coming to full draw on live animals and shooting them.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a big difference between live animals and foam, right? It's like, because I shoot the shit out of foam 3+ days a week, and during right after deer season, like I shouldn't say I'll slow down, but I won't be as diligent with my shooting. It's like some weeks I'll shoot 3 days a week. If I'm really busy, maybe it'll be 2. And then I'll have some free time and I might shoot 5 or whatever. But like, as soon as spring hits or whatever, it's like I'm usually on it like 3-4 days a week. And then as the season gets closer and closer, I'm shooting pretty much every day.
Yep.
Right. So it's like whenever I'm shooting that, it's like I'm I can sling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being on a live target that's moving, that your mouth bleeding to stop. You know, I even shoot from my saddle, you know what I mean, during the off season, just to make sure I'm elevated and, you know, used to like positioning myself the right way and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's still not a live target.
Yeah.
You know, and so that I think is my thing going forward, is exactly what you said. It's like, you know, a lot of times my season will come in September and I'll pass does for like weeks, you know, because I'm hunting bucks or whatever, where I'm like, now I'm thinking back going, man, I should just be slinging throwing some does down.
I almost shot a doe tonight. She was 18 yards. She stood there for like 10 minutes. And it's when you and I were texting, and I was getting the blood pictures, and I'm like, I'm not going to shoot this doe. Like, right. I'm not adding chaos to
right.
you know what I mean? To the night. And then I'm like, wait a second, it's still the rut. Like, what am I doing shooting does? I want these does here. You know,
right,
that's my live bait.
Right. Exactly.
But
exactly.
yeah, I came close to shooting this doe. She's a big fat bottom girl. You know what I mean?
If it was the one that keeps kind of coming like within 60 yards of you, can't smell you, but just stands there and
stares. Yeah. Oh no, she's going to die. She's going to have to die this year. I've seen her just about every night. Yeah. Yeah.
She knows what's up.
I don't like her at all, but you know, and in my past life, you know, we'd go to the range and it was, you know, weapons down range, and we killed a lot of paper, a lot of silhouette targets, you know, and, then the range instructors started changing things up, and they're like, this isn't real life. I'm like, what are you going to do? Shoot at us? You know?
Right.
But while you're shooting, there's somebody else that have sirens going, lights flashing.
Right.
And then before you went to the range, you know, you had to do like 50 push-ups, and you had to do like suicide sprints.
Right.
Then you got your weapon with the lights and the sirens, and
right.
You know, just get all that
adrenaline. Yeah. Try to make it as challenging as possible to where disturb your focus.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
So you can just slow it down, but still, man, I mean, you know, consciously you're taking an animal's life.
Right.
And you know, like there is some part of that where you're like, you know, you got to think about it, you know?
Yep.
And, but yeah, I think I know where I need to be. Part of the thing is I don't like where I'm hunting at. I don't like that field. I don't like that section. It's getting kind of boring to me because I've sat it, you know, and I'm looking at the same thing. And again, I can't put out of my head, I'm like, God, this summer, like I have a laundry list, you know, I'm like, well, that's 3 days worth. That's 2 days worth. I'm like, I think I've got about 2 weeks penciled out. Right. You know, for like May, June, July-ish sometime.
Yep.
I've got some serious work to do in the timber.
When's chigger season?
So for me here, it's like second week of August through the first week of September. Screw it, man. Don't even go in the woods. It's not worth it.
All right, I was going to say, because you got to get all that stuff done before that.
Yeah. You just have to completely like drink DEET and permethrin and everything else.
Right.
Our chiggers it is atrocious.
Yeah.
It's miserable. So yeah, got to get all that done before that.
For sure. Well, man, I think that's a good wrap up. Is there anything else you want to add before we go? Or
no, man, I'm stoked for you. I'm happy for you. Got your deer dropped off at the old barn taxidermy.
They're actually, dude, thanks for that hook up there, because not only am I getting my mount done, right, but they're actually going to, because I'm like supposed to leave tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. It's like they're actually going to debone everything for me and ship me the meat. That way I don't have to, you know, stick around an extra day and take care of it, which is super cool of those guys to do. And they cut my, I call them the hawks, but that's why the guy was probably like, what the hell is that guy talking about? But it's the tarsal glands. I got those off the buck. That way I can use that for some dragon. Wouldn't be able to necessarily use it, I don't think, in PA.
Might scare the PA bucks away.
Well, there's just
that, you know, all that musk.
Oh, that musk. Well, I bring my own musk. Dude, so we're in the tree. Last thing before we go. I'm sitting in the tree and I'm cutting that wind pretty tight, right? And I'm sitting there and I can smell myself. Like my shit's been sweated through so much that like I'm putting it in the dry wash with the ozonics at night and stuff like that, and it still ain't getting rid of it. Oh, it's gnarly. And I'm like, yeah. Like if a deer catches downwind of me today, pretty sure the game's over. Because I smell myself right now.
That's funny.
So with that, I think we're gonna shut this shit show down, and I'm gonna go grab me a shower.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
But thanks for everything, dude. I appreciate
No problem, dude.
you having me out here and being able to hang out and
Yeah.
getting to see you, get some FaceTime with you again. We need to make sure we get that as often as we can.
I know. Likewise.
All right, brother.
Yep.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those two things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.